All right, good morning, everybody. It is Jay again, and it is May currently here in Phoenix, Arizona. And we are going to be doing a video today on mango trees. And this is going to be a culmination of what I have learned here in the last 10 years of growing mangoes in the desert. Okay, so this video is going to be specifically for those wanting to grow mango trees in the desert hot regions. India, Pakistan, Las Vegas, Phoenix, some parts of Texas. All those places are going to be covered by this video in particular. Now, growing mangoes somewhere like Florida is going to be a completely different beast, okay? I'm going to be specifically talking about growing mango trees in a hot, dry region, okay? So this video might be a little bit longer because we are going to be going over quite a few things in this video because, like I said, this is a culmination of the last 10 years of what I have learned about growing mango trees specifically in the desert. So we're going to be covering quite a few subjects in this video. We're going to be covering varieties, sun exposure, food, water, pollination, blooming, diseases, their skin, yard exposure, how to get perfect skin on mango trees, total pollination, take fruit off for the first 7 years, plant a bigger tree if you can, how to adjust the pH of your soil, seed grown versus grafted grown, humidity levels, new growth, where did they come from, time of year to plant them, winter protection, and the last one being kind of careful what you ask for. Okay, so this is going to be maybe a little bit of a longer video because we're going to try to cover all these things in this one video. Now, this might cut off a little bit early and there might be 2 parts to this, but let's just get right into it because I do have a lot to cover, okay? And since we are talking about mango trees, which is the king of fruit, we might as well start right here with the Alfonso tree, which is the king of mangoes, okay? So this Alfonso tree is actually one of the best performing mango trees in my yard. Now, not to say it's the only one because we're going to be covering quite a few of them here, but we're going to be taking a look at this one first so that you guys can see what you're going to end up getting out of a mango tree and the height and the amount of fruit that you will get off of them, okay? So this is a very, very large Alfonso mango. And you can see that this one is planted very, very close to my brick wall. So I've got maybe 18 inches between the brick wall and the trunk of the tree, okay? And then it had protection basically for this first 6 feet of growth because it was on this side of this brick wall. The sun goes this direction, okay? East to west, east being on this side of my property, this being the south side, the west side, of course, right? And then the north side. So that you can see that this one is planted on the side that it needs to be planted on, which is the southern side. So this covers one of the exposures here, okay? So I grow these on mainly 2 sides of the property, although I do have them everywhere. I have them everywhere, okay? Where do they do best at? They do best on the south side, right? And then the east side, the morning sun. As the sun goes across the sky, you would like mangoes to get shaded in the afternoon, which is going to give you far superior fruit. And it's also going to give you nice dark green leaves that mangoes should have, okay? Now, I'm going to get up on the ladder here because I think most of these I'm going to have to do up on the ladder. Okay. So let's see if we can get up here and take a better view of what we're looking at. I can only get so high here, so I'm going to get as high up on this. This is an 8-foot ladder. I'm going to get as high up as I can. And you can see that this goes well above me, so much to the point that even with my arm completely stretched out, I cannot touch the top of this mango tree. And you can see that a lot of the fruit is up here at the top where the sun is. You can see that all these mangoes have set on all these flower bracts. Now you're going to get 1 to 3 generally out of each one of these flower bracts. That's how many mangoes they will end up holding, and it's due to the weight of these branches. These little branches can only hold so much weight, okay? So they're going to set, let's say, 2 to 4 of these mangoes per flower bract. Okay, so how many fruit are you going to get really depends on how many of these flower bracts that you have. Okay, and the majority of them are going to be over here on this full sun side, over here on the neighbor's side actually. So they're going to be enjoying a lot of Alfonso mangoes here soon. Now that you can also see that this is in the shade. We're about 3 o'clock and it's being shaded by a lot of the other trees that are on this western side. So right next to this mango tree, I've got an enormous pear tree. So this pear tree right here is obviously creating a lot of the microclimate in the afternoon that's shading some of these very, very tall mangoes that you really have no way of shading anymore, right? So now you're gonna have to pick certain trees that will now shade them. So this is a pear right here. Right next to it is going to be a moringa. And then right behind that is going to be a giant mulberry. So all those trees are providing nice shade in the afternoon. You can see that we are pretty much in the dark now at this stage. See, this is afternoon. It's about 3 o'clock, and you can see that everything back here is pretty much in the dark, which is what you want out of tropical trees. You want them to get full morning sun exposure, right? You can see there's nothing covering them for the morning. They're getting plenty of light, but then they're getting shaded in the afternoon from some of these larger trees that I have. There's another mulberry over here. So these more or less create, and it goes over to the jacaranda, the rainbow eucalyptus. So these basically create a barrier that shade this entire backyard in the summertime, which now allows all these tropical fruit trees to really, really thrive. Okay, so I'm going to come down here and then we're going to go up here and we're going to talk about another large mango tree that I have here. All right, so I just move the ladder over slightly. We're going to go up on this one here. And we're going to see that this one is pretty good size too. So this one is pretty wide, and you can also see that this one is covered with fruit. It's got a lot of the old flowers here, which will fall off, and then it's got the fruit that are set here, okay? And you can see that it's got quite a few even on this one flower branch, right? So really the way to tell how many of these fruits you're actually going to get is to kind of shake everything clean. And what I mean by that is every one of these mangoes that are actually set, they are set. And what I mean by that is you are not pulling them off. You're not knocking them off. Kids aren't knocking them off. Birds aren't knocking them off. There's no way to actually get a set mango off at this stage unless you go inside and get some scissors or some bolt cutters and you cut these flower bracts, because once a mango has truly been set, there is no pulling or knocking that fruit off until it's ready. It's just the way that it works. So what I usually do is I'll take a little branch like this and I'll just shake it. Basically as hard as I can, right? And then I'll just give these a little flick. Try to knock them off there, right? So the ones that have stayed, see that one detached, right? So that one was never gonna set. It was never going to, ever, okay? So that one would have fallen off during the growth state of this. So now it's fair to say that a good majority of the rest of these are gonna set, and it might be a situation where you might be thinning these. I get this, I hear this a lot, and that is, well, a lot of those are gonna fall off anyway. And that's not the case. You wish they will. So this goes back to the very, very last thing that I said, and that's careful what you ask for, okay? because once these trees get to a certain point and they start to produce really heavy, they're going to set a lot of these mangoes, and they are not going to fall off. As a matter of fact, you're going to have to thin them as we go, and I'm going to show you an example of that also. Wow, look at that longan. That dragon eye fruit is just absolutely beautiful. Everything is so beautiful this time of the year. And I have mangoes literally everywhere, like everywhere on this property, all varieties and sizes and shapes and colors. This one right here happens to be a Japanese mango. This one was sent to me from Japan, and this is the most expensive mango in the world. So these mango fruits, which it doesn't like to set quite as many as other fruit trees, but these mango fruits in particular, these sell for right around $100 a fruit. So you can get extremely premium quality mangoes also that will grow in Phoenix, Arizona if you give them the right conditions. All right, so let's go take another look at that careful what you asked for situation. We're gonna go and look at this mango. I got the big ladder out for this one because this one is quite a bit taller than the rest. So we're gonna go up here and we're gonna take a look at the fruit set on this one, and you will see what I mean by careful what you ask for. Okay, so once we hit this first branch right here, you can kind of see what we're working with here. I hope this shows up on film because I've got the sun behind me right now. Let me get up a little bit higher. And man, guys, I'm telling you, every one of these mangoes is set. And the sheer number on this tree is unbelievable. Every single one of these flower bracts on this particular variety is going to set. So I know I can only show you a few of these because I can only reach a few of these. And I don't know how well that's showing up, but man, is that thing full of mangoes. See if I pull it over here in the sun a little bit more, so you guys can see how many are on here. Do you see the sheer quantity that you can get? So now I'm going to have to thin these because this is quite a bit of load for every one of these branches to handle, and the whole tree is like that. So literally every one of these, oh man, I don't like being this high. Every one of these flower bracts is just completely covered with mangoes. I'm hoping you guys can see this because they're just piled on top of each other, one after another, one after another. And the reason why this one has so many mangoes on it is because this one's actually big enough to enjoy the full sun all day. So you can see here that there is no sun protection for this one. There's the sun here, it's going to come down right through here, and so this one pretty much never gets any shade at all whatsoever. So this one is producing like you wouldn't believe, but it also needed to get this size in order to be able to do this sun exposure, having this many fruits on this tree, if that makes sense. So they need shade when they're a little smaller, but once they get a little bit bigger and you want them to really start producing like these are, then it's gonna need some sunlight. So you're gonna have to keep the microclimate cool underneath it. Okay, so looking down here from this ladder, we've got a huge pineapple guava right here, star fruit underneath it, a fig right underneath the canopy of this tree, and that is really what's keeping most of it cool during the day. So let me see if I can get back down here. Okay, and you can see that down in here, it's nice and cool where it's supposed to be, right? So it is, even though it is up there in the sun, the direct sun with no protection, it does still have a lot of plants around it to keep it cool, okay? And I literally have them everywhere, mangoes everywhere. This is a coconut cream. Oh, coconut cream mango, and you can also see that it is the same situation on these. Once you start getting a lot of fruit set, it's going to keep them. So you almost hope that some of these fall off. So it's a good idea to try to get out here and try to knock some of these fruit off here while they're small, so that they don't get bigger and take a lot of energy away from the other mangoes. So now's the time where I kind of go through here and I kind of clean all these up, give them a good shake, make sure that the mangoes are set, good to go. Okay, so that's coconut cream. Let's go back here. They're everywhere, guys, like I said, and I know I'm gonna miss a whole bunch of them. But they are literally everywhere, fruit poking out. Pretty much everywhere that you look, you're going to find mango fruits, okay? Now let's turn around here. Let's look at one over here that's in more or less, let's call it a hot box corner, okay? So I've got this one back here and I've got a block wall behind it, okay? I've got a metal fence on the side of it. And then underneath this one, I decided to take all the mulch away just to see, and I piled a bunch of river rock underneath it so I could kind of superheat this corner in the morning on the tree. Now, once it hits this barn, it does start to get a little bit of shade, but for the most part, this one's in the full sun, and especially some of these branches that are up taller that are going to be in the full sun no matter what. But the body is down here where it is a little bit cooler. And you can also see that this one is full. This one is full of mangoes also. So this is a Malika. This is also another one of my favorites because these get enormous. Enormous. And if you guys can see, there's a whole bunch up here at the top of the tree also. Pretty much every branch is covered with mangoes. And they're even kind of leaning over here under the side into this trailer park. So eventually they will get some mangoes over there too if they like them. Okay. All right. Okay, and then over here is a Floragon. So it really doesn't really matter the variety too much. And you can also see here that this thing is absolutely full of mangoes. And a lot of those fruit are now pouring over into the neighbor's yard. So they're actually getting, or will get, a bunch of mangoes this year because these things are absolutely loaded. And you can also see that this is back where it is a little bit cooler and then growing up into the sun. Okay, now back in here, there's a whole bunch more. I think there's 9 varieties just back in this little area. And you can see that all of these are also, every one of these is full of fruit. Just full of mangoes. So back here, they're planted really, really dense. There's one here, 2, 3, poking way up here, 3, 4, 5 in the corner. That's a big Pimsing Mum, coconut cream. This is a dot mango. You can see that this one is also full. Every one of them is just completely full of fruit. And then we'll move over to a fruit punch, which is this big one. Also full of fruit. Another Venus right here. And then of course, every time a seed falls, it germinates, and then I get a new mango tree. So like here's the original tree, a seed fell, it grew. This is a mango seedling, which you can see is almost the same size as the grafted mango tree. And then this little seedling has worked his way up all the way up to here. You see it's got enormous leaves on it. And then it works its way all the way up here to its new growth, which you guys can see is this very beautiful purple burgundy type leaf. Now, not all the new growth is going to be burgundy, but it is all going to be very, very, very sensitive, okay? So that's one of the points on my list there is new growth. Anytime you have new growth on mango trees, and remember, they flush about 3 times a year, they're going to put on new mango leaves, okay? So when you see that happening, you want to make sure you give them extra water so that they actually flush those leaves all the way out into a full leaf, okay? You want them to come out as nice full leaves. As they're growing, they're very, very fragile. New mango leaves are like wet tissue paper is really the best way that I can describe them. They are so fragile and rubbery, guys, that you can just tear these by looking at them, and you can see that the wind does in fact tear them. Here is a wind-torn leaf. That's a classic wind-torn leaf. You can see it's got some distortion on it, and it's also got a little bit of tearing. So the wind was affecting and drying this leaf out as it was starting to grow. If you can hit them during a calm season, you're going to get nice, perfect leaves out of them, and they're not going to do that. And believe me, it's really hard to get perfect mango leaves here, especially when they're growing, because when they're growing, the heat is typically on, and the heat likes to fry the new growth on mangoes. So you have to be very, very aware of when they're flushing new growth. And remember, they're not all going to have the same color. Some are going to be green, very light lime green. Some are going to be dark purple, like almost a maroon color on some varieties, the new growth. And then you'll get sort of like this chocolate brown, this color here. That's the new flush on some mangoes. Let's see if I can get underneath here. That's exactly how this mango started. It flushed out brown leaves, and then they turn green, and they get enormous. You want them to come out nice and full size with no distortion, right? So wind is going to beat these guys up, and the direct sun on their new growth is going to fry their new growth also. So most people don't have new mango leaves that look like this, especially in the spring. And then remember, they're going to flush again here in July. And just nobody waters them enough. I can tell you that for a fact. That's just a fact on mangoes. They need good irrigation all the time to keep them nice and green. I mean, we're talking tropical trees here, right? Things like bird of paradise, right? White bird of paradise is going to grow in Hawaii. So you have to give it sort of those same conditions, you know, same with starfruit. All these starfruits have gotten enormous. Every tree here has, actually, and extremely, extremely fruitful. Okay, so you have to create this environment for them. Man, look at the new leaves on this mango. Just absolutely beautiful out here in the full sun. Okay, look at the new leaves on this one, just absolutely perfect. Okay, so leaf growth is a main concern, right? Because remember, these only grow a couple times a year. So if you're frying that new growth every time, then your trees never grow, and you wonder why your mangoes stay so small. It's because you're mainly not watering them enough, and then you're not watching for when they go to their new growth, and then you're not watching when they actually are fruiting. right? And then you have to be very aware of the tree size in order to let it fruit, because trees need to be a certain size and age. Okay, I just realized I'm 25 minutes in and we've covered nothing. So yes, this is going to be a very, very long video. Let's start at the top here with varieties, okay? Varieties, okay, so you live in the desert, you live where it's hot and dry, okay? You don't live in Florida where it's humid and moist. So maybe the type of, remember, mangoes grow all over the world. They grow in pretty much every country, everywhere. India, Pakistan, Chile, every single country, it seems like, especially if it's close to the border or the equator, is going to have a type of variety. Jamaican varieties, Haitian varieties, Florida varieties, okay? So where do you live? You live in the desert, okay? So maybe we just use our common sense here and we grow the types of mango trees that do good in areas that are hot and dry like us, okay? So like, let's say India or Pakistan. Why do you think that their mangoes do so much better than, say, a variety from Florida, right? Like a coconut cream, right? A coconut cream is gonna have giant leaves because it's there in Florida where it can take in water, right? And the Alfonso, a desert variety, is going to have short pointy leaves. Also, the Alfonso in particular, or any of these upright growing ones, they're all upright growing trees. So the shape of the tree makes all the difference in the world on whether or not you're going to keep the tree alive. Do not get any weeping mangoes. Weeping mangoes would be like a coconut cream mango. They weep, okay, like a weeping mulberry. They have no strength in their branches. All their branches just kind of flop all over, right? So now, when your branches are flopping over, it exposes the branches to the sun, and then that's what kills your mango trees, especially your Florida varieties that have very large leaves, and your weeping varieties that are going to weep now and get burnt. And it also covers a lot of these dwarf varieties also. So I don't care for those three. If you wanna know, I don't care for the dwarfs, I don't care for the weeping type trees, and I don't care for the humid loving varieties like the Florida selections where you need so much humidity, okay? And it's not that I can't get the humidity, because I've got the humidity, okay? You can see that these things just thrive and look green and wonderful all the time. It's that no one else can get the humidity. So if you're planting these things in the desert, which most of you are, then maybe a little bit of common sense will come into play here, and let's maybe grow some varieties that were developed in an area that is exactly like ours. Okay, sun exposure. They like the morning sun. My best varieties are on the sun, or on the morning sun part of the property. I do have them everywhere, like I said. I've got them on the north, I've got them on the west side too. Those don't look as great or nowhere near as good because they're getting fried from the sun. An ideal situation for a mango tree, any mango tree, would be to plant it behind a block wall, just like this, and let it grow up into the sunlight, and it'll adapt and it'll harden off, and it will be fine for that type of environment, okay? Food. I basically only feed these things compost. Compost, okay? And that's really to get them going when they're young in their life, okay? So what I do is I dig a hole that's big enough, 24 inch by 24 inch. I'm gonna mend that soil 50-50 with some compost, and I'm gonna put that mango tree in there, and I'm gonna do nothing else. No vitamin B, no kelp, no fish meal. Oh my gosh, you guys throw the kitchen sinks at these things and then you don't know what killed them, okay? So I'm telling you right now, you don't have to do any of that. So wow, make your life easy, right? And remember that they're going to self-feed after a certain amount of time, and you're not going to have to mulch them anymore, okay? So, or compost them anymore. So as they get older and they drop enough of these leaves down, then you'll end up building up a very good layer of leaf drop underneath this tree. And now that is the earthworm food, and then they will poop, and then that is the food for the mango trees, guys. So it's very, very, very simple. And you can also see that anytime a mango drops, if I miss one, it germinates. It germinates underneath mama, and they are waiting to get out to the sunlight. But these can be grafted onto later if you do not like the fruit that they would produce. Okay, next one here, water. You don't water enough, I can just tell you that right now. Hose water, these things need to be irrigated quite frequently. And there is a huge difference between hose water and flood irrigation here. So if you are not familiar what flood irrigation is in Arizona, what that is there's a few houses here that are lucky enough to be able to flood their entire yard with about a foot of water, their entire yard with about a foot of water, or 2 feet or 3 feet or however many acre feet you order, right? And it's going to flood that yard, and it's going to, you don't realize how much water this is, okay? It's going to flood this whole thing, and then that's going to settle down into the ground, okay? Then as the soil is drying between flood irrigations, because they get those floods about every 2 weeks. So between those 2 flood irrigations, the soil is drying up off the ground, and it's creating humidity for these tropical types of plants. So if you have a flood irrigated yard in particular, okay, it's easy, and you can, and a lot of this information isn't even gonna go towards you, because now you have a Florida yard, okay, and you can grow anything just like Florida. You put it in the ground and it's just gonna grow, okay? So those that have flood irrigation here have a cheat code, but also realize that they're paying for that cheat code, because most of the flood irrigated properties here, you know, $1 million and up. So you have to pay for that, basically that right to have all that water flooded into your yard every 2 weeks. Now, for those of you that are poor like me, we have to use a hose, okay? But it doesn't mean we can't get this done, because remember, I've got everything on hose water. Everything's on hose water, right? And I don't filter it at all whatsoever. So I literally do what the average person's gonna do, because when you start selling people trees, you need to do as though you want them to do, because if you have a yard that's too good and then they have a yard that's poor and hot and dry, well, they're not going to have the same results as you. So you really need to figure out a system of doing this without getting flood irrigation, okay? And that's the tricky part, okay? Because that goes back to one of the points on my list, which is humidity. You're never going to keep the humidity up like you will a flood irrigated yard. That is just impossible to do, but you can get very, very close by having ground cover on the ground, by having mulch on the ground, by having a bunch of trees, because remember, trees provide humidity, and then a bunch of trees that are overhead above you that are going to hold that moisture in and not let it evaporate, you know, once you put that water down, okay? Dragon fruit, things like this, they need humidity, especially if you're going to put them in the full sun. So if you're going to hose water, like I hose water, you're going to be watering these things quite a bit or quite frequently, because they dry out very, very, very quickly. So they just need good irrigation. So a lot of this is people are trying to do too much to these, and they're a very simple plant. It's just a matter of patience. Okay, pollination. So pollination on a lot of these type of flowers, when you get mangoes and you get long ends and wompies and lychees, you'll notice that a lot of these flowers are so small that a bee can't even really pollinate them. But if you'll stand real still near them, you'll notice that one, not only is there a lot of ants on these flower bracts that are pollinating the flowers, but mangoes in particular are going to be, you'll find mosquitoes on them at night, because that's their nighttime pollinator. And then you will find flies on them during the day, because flies are their daytime pollinator. So that's what you're going to find pollinating your mango trees. And without those two things, you're never going to get fruit. So when mango trees are flowering, their flowers smell very much like an overripe banana. I'm telling you, your whole yard is going to end up smelling like bananas when they flower. And then that smell is what attracts the flies, which are then going to set the pollination on your mango trees. Which comes to another good question of blooming. So when do these bloom, Jay? So these bloom in Phoenix, or in my yard. They just so happen to bloom during the coldest time of the year, which happens to be January. So January is the time when most of these are flowering. And it's really good because you actually do want them to flower during that time period when it's cold. And the reason why is because there's a little bit more humidity in the wintertime, okay? As we start to dry out, it's going to start to dry out your mango flowers. So if they bloom too late in the year, which was almost this year, they bloomed quite a bit later, then what happens is a lot of your flowers end up drying up and falling off before they actually set pollination. And that is due to it being too hot outside already, and a lot of that pollen is going to dry up and just become crispy. So you notice that I can snap some of these branches off here, right? These little flower bracts, because they never set, because they bloomed a little bit later than they should have, and they dried a little bit before they should have. And it's even on the same plant as one. This is the same tree right here with all these fruit on it right here, right? Well, this flower bract over here just stayed a little bit more humid, just being over here on the side. This one was a little bit more exposed to the sun, and so a lot of those will dry out. You'll notice that. And then they'll become crispy, and then you're only going to get, like, let's say 1 or 2 mangoes on those flowers. So you do actually want them to flower early when it's cold. You just have to know what to do with them, and that's really cold protecting them when they're smaller. So that is another point on my list there, is mangoes in the wintertime. So when they're little guys, you might want to protect them because they would normally grow as an understory underneath mama when they're little, okay? So as we look down here, you can see that there's some the mango seedlings, you know, germinate underneath all these trees. And so they're going to be underneath mama, and they're not going to be in any kind of a frost zone. So what it does is it protects these little seedling trees or little grafted mango trees. You want to protect them. So you want to you got to do something kind of like mama here. And that's kind of protect and keep it warm. So we've got a lot of mulch on the ground under here where it's warmer. And then that would allow these to germinate and grow to a certain size, and then they're going to wait there until they can get out. They can get their trunk up and out, like this one here. And now once it's up and out, now it's going to just charge for the sun, because it's the next generation behind this tree, and it's looking for the sun to be a replacement for mama tree, obviously, right? Now, I don't want all these growing underneath there, so I'm routinely going through here and I'm pulling all these mango trees out of here. And don't feel bad for them, because I do start a lot from seed, which is another thing we'll get into here in just a minute. So I'm always pulling these out of here, like I did this one right here. And you can see that this mango tree is about, let's say it's about 14 inches tall. Okay, and you can see that the root on it, or the tap root, is the same length as the tree, right? So this tells you a couple interesting things about the root system on a mango tree. And one that is they don't get feeder roots for a while. So that's why you have to water these so much, is because these are just relying on a single little tap root that goes down for a long time. They don't start to grow these side shoots or these side branches that'll actually start to absorb water and drink until the tree is at least 3 years old, okay? So that, you can see that there's no side roots at all. It's just a single taproot that goes down. A couple little feeders, barely, starting, and then it goes all the way down to the tap, which I actually broke by digging it out of the ground, okay? So that tells you, one, that's why I'm having to water this thing so much, because it ain't got no feeder roots. It's just drinking off that one taproot basically all the time, which goes down, super, super deep. You know, I got people telling me that these things don't have deep roots. Well, it's already got a 2-foot root. It's only 2 foot tall. So I think it's probably going to go down a little bit deeper. okay? Trust me, we've dug up even big mangoes to see how deep their roots go, okay? So why else is this interesting? Well, the other reason this is interesting is because you buy a lot of these things, a lot of these mango trees in a pot. And you can see that, well, I have one right here as an example. You can see right here, this is almost the same tree, okay? Let's compare these two, okay? So if we put this down to the soil line and we compare it to the pot level, so the root starts here. Notice anything? It's already hitting the bottom. It's already hitting the bottom. It's barely, this is a five gallon container. So you would think that, you know, you'd have some time before this mango tree actually hit the bottom and started to coil, right? It's gonna hit the bottom and start to coil, okay? So now you can imagine a big mango tree that is in a pot. Its roots, especially its taproot, which it relies the most on, is going to be coiled, okay? So you'll never get that big taproot back. And the reason they say your grafted mango trees are not going to get that big is because they don't have that taproot, right? So if you want enormous mango trees, even bigger than some of these around here, what you would have to do is grow your own seed just like this, and then graft this tree, cut this off, cut the top part of this mango tree off, graft on what you're wanting to, and then you'll have a superior tree because you'll have the root system of a seedling tree, which is another one on my list there, is seedling versus grafted, okay? So you can absolutely grow them from a seed. It's going to be a better plant. If you don't like the fruit in the end, you can graft them even later when they're bigger trees. You can graft onto them. But that root is very, very, very important. Okay, so I thought I'd pull one of those up so you can take a look. This is a lot of the reason why we're failing, is because we just have no information on these things. Okay, so they bloom and they freeze. Diseases. Okay, so the diseases that you're going to encounter the most in Arizona is probably going to be powdery mildew. And what powdery mildew does is, if your yard is too wet, especially in the winter time, when these are starting to bloom, what happens is you'll get a fungus that covers the flowers, and it kills the flowers and it kills the fruit, okay? The likelihood of that happening in Phoenix, Arizona, where it's so dry and nobody waters anyway, is probably pretty slim. I mean, I wouldn't worry about it too much because nobody waters here, so we're good to go. You're not going to get a lot of those diseases that you would get, you know, in Florida or somewhere where it's a little bit more tropical. They're not as prone to those diseases, but it doesn't mean they can't still get them depending on your yard. All right, so now we're going to talk about sun exposure, and I'll talk about how mangoes are in the green-skinned family. And what I mean by the green-skinned family is all these plants in these families, they stay green. Their stems turn green or are green. They are not woody, and in fact, they're not going to develop wood for many, 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 many years. Okay, the skin is green on them. Okay, it's not like, say, a longan, like a dragonite fruit or any other fruit tree that's got actual bark on it. They will bark up, but it's not exactly a true bark, okay? It's more like a skin, okay? And when they're very young, all that's going to be green. It's always going to be green, okay? And when you get things in the green-skinned family, okay, so green-skinned family, they're not going to be all related. So an avocado is also still in that group, considered in that group, where they keep this green skin, okay? They don't have bark. In fact, they don't get bark till they're much, much older. So anything that has green skin like this, and there's 3 that I can think of. 1 is avocado, 2 is mango, and 3 is a silk floss tree. So here's a silk floss tree. You can see that it's got green skin. Another plant that people might be familiar with here in Arizona is going to be a palo verde, because palo verdes also have green skin and they photosynthesize through their actual bark. okay? But when you have direct sun exposure on green-skinned plants, what happens is they burn. So let's get around to just the other side of this tree here. And I'm hoping this shows up. Do you guys kind of see how it's kind of yellow and kind of cracked? And then as we go down here, you'll actually see some of that bark start to develop, right? So that bark's not supposed to be there. I'll tell you that right now. The things bark here to cover up, they're burning. They're getting burned. They're getting exposed to the sun. And so this exact same thing happens to your avocado trees and your mango trees. You can see it real good right here, where it's over here, not in the direct sun. And then as we go over to the direct sun, you can see that it's put on this bark. Now, the good thing about this tree in particular is this tree can do it. So by being burnt, what it's going to do is it's going to end up putting on bark, okay, to kind of cover those areas. But you'll notice it also loses a lot of the thorns, those cool thorns, in those areas where it's being baked by the sun. The majority of those thorns are going to be back here on this side where it's a lot darker. Okay, that's where a lot of these thorns are going to be. So what happens to mangoes? Well, what happens when they get exposed to the direct sun like this, and it doesn't mean it can't be done, because there's one right here. This is a sunrise mango. This one is in only afternoon sun because it has a tree above it that blocks the morning sun. And so this one actually gets only afternoon sun. And you can see that this one's doing really, really good too. And he has fruit on him also. So even in the full sun exposure, it can be done, right? But is it recommended? No. And also keep in mind that the trunk of this tree is almost completely shaded by the canopy of the tree. There's only a little bit of the trunk exposed, but for the most part, the rest of it is sitting out here in the full sun. And it does have mangoes, afternoon sun, and there's concrete sidewalk underneath it and nothing to shield it, okay? So it can be done. Is that ideal though? No, because remember I was telling you most of them should be on that southern side or kind of wrap around the morning side. But I do have them everywhere in all exposures. They just do the best in the exposure that I just told you. You can even have them over on the north side. So this is the north side, right? So you can have them on the north side as long as you can create enough of like a nice cool canopy in order to put them on that north side. And then also remember, you can put them on the south side of the north side, if that makes sense. So there's a really beautiful mango right here. This one's just flushed out also. You can see the absolutely ginormous leaves on them, but also keep in mind that these are like tissue paper at this moment. But you can see that he's doing great here. And he is just on the opposite side, so right up against the house, where he's going to stay a little bit cooler, and he's also going to stay a little bit warmer, okay? But you can put them everywhere. Just remember, some are going to do better. Here's a little seedling mangoes that I'm growing. They're flushing all new growth, even right out here with the hot afternoon exposure. Okay, we'll move right over here. And this is the full western sun. And I even have a little dwarf right here. I don't know how much he's going to show up he's a little bit in the dark, but he is also covered with fruit. And he's just a low guy. I mean, you can see he's just not that big, and he's planted in cement with a metal wall, metal siding behind him. Oh, guys, it's just me. Hey. Metal behind it, concrete around it, and then southern exposure, okay? Now, let's go back this way. get back into the coolness here. All right. Whew, get out of that afternoon side. Let's get back here and finish this off. Okay, much cooler back here. Wow, like literally like 20 degrees cooler back here. That afternoon side is just unreal. Okay, skin. Let's go over the skin on mangoes. So we get perfect skin on mangoes here. And it's due to them not getting a lot of those diseases like I talked about, a lot of the fungal diseases that you'll find in areas like Florida. They're not going to get them here because it's so hot and dry, okay? So you're going to get absolutely beautiful, perfect skin mangoes here. Really the way to do that is to cover them. So if you'll cover them with what we call organzo bags, that's going to protect them not only from being sunburnt, the actual fruit, but it's going to keep the skin perfect from bugs and birds and everything else. So literally, this is one of the only states that I've seen that you can get literally a perfect fruit out of it with no blemishing on the skin at all whatsoever. Okay, take fruit off for 7 years. Everyone's going to hate this one, okay? So this is a long-term project. When you talk mango trees, you're talking almost reverse dog years as far as like the way that they grow, okay? So like a 7-year-old mango is gonna basically act like a 1-year-old mango tree of a normal, 1-year-old tree of any other sort here. So like a peach tree, right? A 14-year-old mango is gonna represent like a 2-year-old peach tree here with the amount of fruit and growth that it actually gets. So when you're talking mangoes, you're talking the long game, playing the long game, okay? And most people in Arizona do not even stay in their house more than like 3 to 5 years, let's call it, okay? People are always moving here. So right about the time you've invested in a mango and you've got it to about the size you want it and start enjoying it, most people end up moving. So if you're going to plant a mango tree in your yard, in Arizona in particular, it's not like Florida where it can grow as a weed. It's a long-term investment here, and it's going to be a long time before you get fruit. So you're going to literally have to go through and physically pick all the fruit off of these trees until they're bigger. And I know it's going to kill you, but hey, that's part of the game. And especially when they're little, guys, there is no way little mango trees are going to produce and live at the same time. All right, so here is an example of that. You can see a very small mango tree here. It is grafted. It is a Malika, so it happens to be the one that I have back there in the corner. And you can see that, of course, it's going to flower the first year, and it's going to put on fruit. Right, and it'll be quite a few fruit actually here for this small of a mango tree. And remember, he's probably not going to abort a lot of these because they just don't. Okay, so just because you can doesn't mean you should. Okay, so just because this little fruit tree can produce mangoes doesn't mean you want it to. Okay, so this is like a 4 or 5-year-old human being trying to have children, okay? Don't be that guy. Don't be that guy, okay? You're gonna have to pick these off. And I know this absolutely kills people to do this. And that's why I usually do it before I sell people mango trees, because if I sold this tree with this fruit on it, you can almost guarantee you the person is going to leave every one of these because they just want to try one, okay? And that is to the death of this tree, because if this tree produced even one mango, it's a goner. So you're going to have to go through here, and I know it's hard, but you're going to have to pop off every one of these mangoes. Whoop! I usually wait till they set, so about the size of a pea, so about how they were, right? And then I go through here and I make sure I pull every single mango off, okay? And you're gonna do that for the next 7 years, okay? So, like I said, it's a long-term plant, but you do want them eventually, right? So, especially something this small, This might be more like 10 years to fruit. When you're talking these very small trees like this, it's almost like don't even bother. If you're gonna buy, this is another point on my list, it comes down to size. If you're gonna buy something like this, that's fine, but keep it in a pot and grow it out yourself until it's bigger. And do not plant that mango in the ground. Do not plant that mango in the ground until that trunk is at least 1 inch thick. Okay, so you're looking at the trunk. It needs to be at least 1 inch thick, 1 inch thick, and 6 foot tall. So average human height is what they need to be before you even bother putting them in the ground if you want good success with them. And why is that? That's because they're going to freeze religiously at this size until they hit about 6 foot. Once they hit about the 6 foot size, they should be good to go. Really no worries at that point. And you're even going to take it off of bigger mangoes, take the mango fruit off of bigger mangoes if they're not doing so good. So I got a couple that are struggling in the front yard. Remember that west side is the absolute worst side. And so even though those trees are larger, they do not have the foliage that these do. Okay, so I tore all the fruit off of them. I think I got them all off, the ones there in the front. Those have been pulled off. Now I'll get some vegetative growth, which will give me some leaves, which will cover up more of the trunk so I don't have to later. And then you'll eventually get fruit a lot later. And I'm hoping all this is starting to make sense now, guys. Okay, we're almost done. Where are we at here? Where are we at? Okay, plant a bigger tree. Okay, pH. pH of the soil. Stop throwing things at these trees, especially sulfur, because now you're going too far the other direction. Okay, so the soil here is alkaline. It needs to be a little bit more acidic. Okay, but it doesn't have to be pure acid, and doesn't even have to be neutral, because remember, these trees are growing just fine into the alkaline soil. Okay, so how I plant these is with compost. I'm in the soil 50-50, and I water the tree, and I walk away from it, and I walk away from it for 7 years, let's call it, unless I'm pulling fruit off of it. So I'm basically ignoring that mango for a long, long time, and that's really what I've learned you got to do on these things. Okay, so people have no information on these. There's very little information on growing mangoes in Phoenix or in the desert. I mean, there's a couple up in Phoenix there that people grew as a seedling, 30 years ago. So they've got big mango trees. But other than that, especially when it comes to grafted mango trees, there's not a whole lot of information in the valley about that. So, or in a hot, dry area. So this is basically the information that I've accumulated just by watching all these trees and planting them in different locations all over the yard and giving them different care. And really the care just comes down to just give them as much love as you would any other tropical tree, and you should be fine, with the exception of you need to get the humidity up. So that's one of the points on the list, is you need to get it somewhere near 40%. And it's very, very difficult to get that here. Okay, because we run an average of like 7 to 16% humidity. So your humidity, it's going to be very hard to get those levels, right? So that's why flood irrigation is so good, or mulch and sprinklers. You can see I've got the mulch here and I've got sprinklers. That gets everything wet, and then it acts like a swamp cooler, and it dries off all day long, and it provides humidity for these plants, and then everything just thrives. I mean, things look amazing here through the summer. They look better through the summer than any other time, because tropicals love the heat and they grow during the summer. When would I plant one of these? Another thing on my list. When they're active, when they're growing and they're doing something. So right about now is when I'd start planting mango trees. Okay, everyone wants to throw everything in March or February and be done for the year. And holy moly, lazy gardeners. Okay. Gardening is all year, okay? And the best time is actually during the summer, when no one shows up. No one shows up because it's too hot, right, for them. And they don't realize that they're missing literally, I'm going to call it 60% or more of fruit, because they don't want to be out here during the heat. And guess when mangoes ripen? During the heat. Okay, so you're going to get a very, very long season out of mangoes here. And typically they go June, July, August, September, October, November. And I've even eaten keep mangoes on Christmas here. Okay, in Phoenix, Arizona. So, very long season due to our warmer climate, okay? But it's dry. It's a dry heat, okay? That's why you moved here, because it's a dry heat. You didn't want Florida, and you didn't want humidity, so now, but now you want tropical fruit trees. So now you have to bring the humidity back, but you're like, oh, I don't want to deal with the humidity. And guys, when you got a day like today where it's nice and breezy too, or a hot day when it's breezy, understand that it's 30 degrees cooler in this yard because you've got the cooling effect of the water and all the humidity and the moisture, okay? I've eliminated the air conditioning in my house. That will be a separate video. And that is due to all these plants and trees that I have around the property, okay? Okay, so I want to say I've covered mostly everything on that list. Varieties, definitely. We talked about desert varieties. Sun, morning sun. Okay, we're going to recap for those that missed it in the beginning of the video. Food, compost only. Leave them alone. Leave them alone for many, many years. Just water them. How much do you water them? Water them quite a bit, especially to get established. As they get bigger and bigger, you can cut the water down on them. Pollination is by bugs, okay? Blooming, they're going to bloom when it freezes, so you better get good at protecting mangoes or figuring out how to keep a fruit tree alive in the valley. It's not that hard, okay? Diseases, you don't have to worry about too many of them here in Arizona, so that's kind of nice. Skin, going back to the burnt forever skin, I'm going to put in one more little note here. You're not going to notice it for about 6 to 7 years. So normal trees, when they get sunburnt, they're going to peel. The bark's going to peel off, and you'll notice that you'll see the bark underneath, or the wood underneath there. That's not the case on mangoes, and that's why they're so tricky, is because they hide their damage, okay? And you won't see it for a while. And I'm going to show you a part right over here on this tree where it just finally peeled off, okay? Now you can see it right here where this cambium layer has burnt off, right? And you might think to yourself, well, what's going on with this? This got sunburnt probably before I even planted it, okay? It got sunburnt really bad on this branch, right? I don't know where I got this mango from, but I'm gonna guess this was picked up in a parking lot in Phoenix, one of those type mango trees, okay? I'm not gonna say where. And so it sat out there in the parking lot, burnt. You didn't know it because remember I said skin hides on mangoes. And so you'll get that thing, and then X amount of years later, it'll start to actually peel the bark off. And then now you can see the damage that occurred from so long ago. Now, good part about this is I have two choices here. One is it's healing. You can see the fresh cambium layer is starting to heal over this sunburnt mango, okay? This is what happens. This is how they die here. This is how they die, okay? Or I could wrap this with something, which will prevent it from sunburning further, okay? And that'll actually allow it to heal a lot quicker. Or what I'm probably gonna do, since I have 55 other mango trees around here, and the other half of this tree is not burnt in a good shape, is I'm probably just gonna cut it off. I'm probably just gonna cut this off and not even bother letting it try to reheal this side, and it'll regrow. I mean, it looks good now, right? Even with that damage on there, it looks good, but I'm just gonna cut it off. I'm just gonna cut it off and let it start all over again. And I've done that on a few mangoes, and I know it drives people insane because I'm literally hacking a mango down to the ground. But like for instance, I did it on this one here. I've got this mango tree right here, and it was kind of crowding into this one, so I cut this one off. This was a big mango tree. It actually filled this whole section here, and I just lopped her off. Cut everything off, right? So now one of two things is going to happen here. Either this thing's going to die completely because I basically cut the whole canopy off the tree, or it's going to come back with a vengeance on new buds, and I'm not going to be able to kill it because I've already tried killing this one a bunch of times anyway. And you guys can see back here, it really becomes a nightmare of these seedlings. These are all seedling trees. This is a seedling mango. Got some nice leaves on him though, so I'm gonna leave this one. I'll graft him later. But then they're just always sprouting, and I'm always having to pull them out. And yes, they look good. They're pretty. I mean, so it's very hard to kill them and pull them out of here, but they just become too many. You end up getting this this forest of like these baby mango trees. There's another one there. Another one there. This is a seedling. And also too, you can see that seedling is almost as big as the grafted tree next to it, and then it's got another seedling growing next to that seedling. So it becomes too much. So one, careful what you ask for, because you're going to get a lot more mango trees than you thought you were, and then two, you're going to get way more fruit than you expected to. Okay, once they hit a certain size and age. All right, guys, that is it for the video. I got it in right about an hour, which was nice. If you guys have any more questions, go ahead and put those in the comments. Please put a like on this video. And like I said, this is the last 10 some odd years of growing different things. And I collect from all over the world, guys. I get sent plants from everywhere, okay? And I like to trial different things, and I like to experiment, right? So a lot of things, definitely people keep sending me things, seeds, stems, cuttings, and then I do order a lot of trees from different nurseries and different spots so that I can see how well their plants do or how well they taste. So I'll often order from a lot of online companies, because a lot of online companies are going to have certain things that you won't find around here locally that you might want. Like these goji berries. These are Phoenix tears, which happen to be a little bit sweeter than most normal goji berries, because I can't really choke those down. So these are pretty sweet. So I can do these goji berries. So you'll end up getting a lot of plants mail order too, but they're going to be smaller. Most of the time, mail order plants are going to be very small and very expensive. You know, so for instance, like this little mango tree, if you mail order something like this from a company, they're generally about $100 for something like this. A tree about this size is going to cost you about $100 shipped. That's a 3-gallon pot, little mango tree, right? If you get things locally or locally grown, you know, things are a lot cheaper. So like you'll be able to find mango trees like this. I've seen them here in Phoenix at different nurseries for even as low as like $25, right? And then people don't see the value in these because they're buying them so cheap for the $25. They usually let those plants die. Okay. When people buy a little bit more expensive trees, they tend to not let them die. So I'm not saying don't experiment. Don't experiment, guys. Try things from all over the world. Anywhere in the United States you can try things from. And that's how I've gotten so good at growing all these different things, or different things from other countries, like that Japanese mango, which probably shouldn't exist here in Phoenix, Arizona, you know, or things like wampy trees. I don't even know where to get one. I don't even know where to get these, right? And I grow them, but I don't know where to source these. But I will tell you that they'll fruit here. Here's some fruit here. And that they are a wonderful, wonderful evergreen tree. So besides mangoes, guys, there's a lot of different varieties of things. But I'm going to end this video here, guys. So thank you for watching. Please give me a like I said. And remember, too, that this is a culmination of what I have learned from the last 10 years of growing mangoes in the desert. It may be a different experience for someone else. And remember, different people are going to have different results depending on your type of yard or how much you love certain varieties. If you love a coconut cream mango, you're going to make it succeed, right? And then you're going to make us all look like fools because we didn't get it to succeed, but you really loved that plant. So you just put your heart and soul into it, and it worked. All right, guys, that is it. Thank you for watching.